maybe it'll show up here. Anyways, Stan Getz theory knowledge. I guess this relates to how Stan Getz was a very intuitive type of jazz musician. So he didn't really knew chords, or I believe he didn't even know which scales or what are scales, what are the changes of tunes and these things. He did everything very intuitive by ear, and he learned a lot of tunes just by listening to it. He also learned how to play just by listening to it. There's many interviews that you can find about it, but he amazing ear. Also transcribed a lot of Lester Young, Charlie Parker later on. Residency artists. These are artists that are invited by a festival or venue to stay for a couple of days or weeks to play or give workshops when they are invited to, like Herbie Hancock had a residency at North Sea Jazz Festival. He played a couple times and it was amazing. Jazz at Lincoln Center. That's the band of Wynton Marsalis, I believe, the orchestra there. And there's a YouTube channel, Jazz at Lincoln Center, that has a lot of tips, cool little segments about jazz and how to learn jazz. Transcribing is the main form of learning how to play this music. It's always my first advice if you want to get into jazz music. Start transcribing, start imitating jazz guitar players that or jazz musicians in general that you want to sound like, and just check out what notes they are playing. There's many different types of ways that you can transcribe. Usually when you hear transcribe, you think of the word like literally write down, transcribing what someone is saying. That's where the word comes from. But there's many schools of and many different opinions about what is the best way to handle transcribing. So it can be sometimes just by ear. You can do the whole solo. You can just do like a little part that you liked. More important thing is that you just do it and do it a lot. You can use it for technique. That's transcribing. One of the most important elements about learning the music. YATAG. This I don't know. This I will have to look up. YATAG. Meaning. Apparently it's related to Lester Young. Where was it? Ah, damn. I saw it somewhere. It was referenced. Something to do with You Are the Angel or something. This is a poem. As an interesting alternative to Oscar Hammerstein's romantic lyrics, the well-known and much recorded jazz bassist Red Mitchell wrote an alternate set of lyrics to All the Things You Are, which are published as a poem titled You Are in the 1999 book Keith Red Mitchell, Selected Poems, 1968-1992. You are your greatest composition, the one folks hear. You are your greatest composition, the one folks hear. When they hear your name, you are your spirit's own physician, the one who heals yourself. As a daily game, you can't create yourself. That job's been done, you can compose yourself. It's kind of fun. You are the people you have turned to, and you are the one who does what you do. Your major work of art is you. Reprinted with permission from Red Ink Music Co. Okay, cool. I had no idea about this. However, this is not exactly what I was looking for. Lester Young called this song YATAG for You Are the Angel Glow. So that's where it comes from. So if I put Lester Young, man, what a world. Oh. Jesus. Man, this is a whole thesis. Yeah, well, it's just a joke from Lester Young, I guess, from You Are the Angel Glow. I think that's when you go to the bridge. I think that's it, honestly. YATAG. Cool. Did not know that. Tritone substitution. That's when you substitute a dominant chord for the... You substitute, really what you do, you substitute the root. A tritone up or down is the same. So if you have a D7, you just go a tritone, the interval tritone, up or down, and you get a A flat 7 instead of a D7. The chord is pretty much the same, only the root changes. And yeah, if you think about scale and chords, if you believe in scale chords theory, then you would be doing a melodic minor kind of trick, usually. And you also have tritone substitution with 2-5-1, so you just add a minor 2 before that A flat 7, you add a minor 2 that comes from it, and you could replace D7 with a E flat minor 7, A flat 7, which is kind of cool. Jazz in Asia. I guess this is about how well received jazz in Asia is. Japanese jazz, super popular, also on YouTube. Sometimes you get recommended these crazy records from people who made super obscure records in Japan, and they just start popping up on your YouTube recommendations. Is jazz popular in Asia? Even so, jazz was being performed in a much larger number of cities and countries throughout Asia. In China, jazz bands could be found in Beijing, Qingdao, Wei, Tianjin, and other treaty port towns. Hong Kong also boosted its own lively jazz scene. In Japan, cities such as Osaka, Kobe, and Yokohama had jazz clubs. So this is about performing jazz in the Pacific between 1920 and 1945. It's kind of funny that during the Second World War, then you still had jazz clubs in Japan, for example. Or maybe not. What is Japanese jazz called? Asian American. Attempts at fusing jazz with Japanese culture in the United States are commonly termed Asian American jazz. So that's when you, like Patrick Bartley, when he plays jazz tunes, anime tunes as jazz tunes. Cool. Quotes. Quotes is, I believe they refer to when you quote a tune or someone else's solo during your solo. So you have that happens a lot in Charlie Parker tunes. When Charlie Parker solos, he does a lot of quotes from other tunes while he's playing a different tune. Dizzy Gillespie also. So it's part of the bebop tradition that you do some quotes here and there. If you start developing more knowledge about standard jazz tunes, then you start to recognize it more and more on people's solos. Weather Report is perhaps the most important fusion band of jazz, with Wayne Shorter, Joe Zawinul, Jaco Pastorius, and the drummers would change more. What a lot of people don't know is that Teen Town from Weather Report is actually played on the drums by Jaco Pastorius himself. But yeah, great band, just great records, very different way of playing for their time. Also the instrumentation. Sonny Stitt, underrated, missing an R. Yeah, Sonny Stitt is incredible, technical, vocabulary-wise. He's not just a Charlie Parker copy, absolutely not. He is very, very good, very, very good sound. But he did become popular in his time by sounding a lot like Charlie Parker, especially after Charlie Parker dying. But definitely check out Sonny Stitt for if you want to learn bebop, like really burning bebop. Don't overlook him. Also, he has a really cool rhythm head contrafact, Eternal Triangle, with some very cool alternative changes on the bridge. Very cool. Clave rhythm is, this can mean a lot of things. Clave is literally means key, and in general Cuban music or Latin music, not including Brazilian music, you have a certain pattern that repeats itself. So you have son clave, you have rumba clave, and this is all about how you usually have 2 bars, a clave, and you have question and a response part of the clave, which is the 2-3 or 3-2, and those can turn around. So that's why you see son 2-3 son clave or something like that. Usually in Brazil they don't think so much in claves, they think more in a different way, in the levadas, but they do have a certain pattern. However, if you start listening to some bebop drummers and how they comp on the snare and these things, you can also hear some clave rhythms that they're thinking of. And so if you're like a comping instrument that plays chords and these things, then you can start thinking about that when you're just playing chords. Don't just hit random rhythms. Start listening to how the drum, what type of patterns they're playing. Maybe they're thinking of certain things that they're insinuating. And as a comping guy, is really cool to be aware of that and complement that. Or like if you're playing a solo, like Sonny Rollins with his trio, if he start listening, thinking about clave rhythms in jazz comping, you can hear a lot of it. So not just for Latin music. Freddie Hubbard, we already talked about him. We talked about his misadventures. I believe it's also repeated because here's Freddie Hubbard. If I go back, here is also Freddie Hubbard. So 2 Freddie Hubbards. Speak No Evil, the first record from Wayne Shorter, probably his most important one. Great band there. Hard to say, no, it's not the most important one, but very good record. Coltrane Changes. It's almost a joke nowadays. I don't think Coltrane ever played Giant Steps live, at least recorded. But he did overimpose Coltrane Changes on tunes. And I think he also played some perhaps satellite or something live. Coltrane Changes is when you modulate in major thirds. So you have, if you go from B, for example, a major third, up, you have D sharp major or E flat major, easier. And then if you go one more, then you have G major. And then if you go one more, you go back to the B. So you have an augmented triad where you modulate within. And between those modulations, you can have a dominant chord to prepare that modulation. That's basically what Coltrane changes are. You can go up or down, so from B to E flat major, or you can go from B to G major, which also happens. There's many different types of ways to improvise over Coltrane changes. Usually Coltrane himself would literally spell out those changes with the patterns, 1, 2, 3, 5, and these things. And you could really hear it clearly, especially if he overimposed it over tunes where they were not playing the Coltrane changes. So then if you play those patterns, it's very obvious harmonically that you're playing it. But you could also use different approaches, like Chick Corea, for example. He would only play the minor 2 of the 5. So instead of having B major, D7 to G major, he would think B major, A minor, G major, and then one more F minor to E flat major. So instead of jumping so much, you can think of the minor counterparts as well during Coltrane changes. Can give you a bit more different ideas, or especially if you start thinking of melodic minor within those, for example, just to open up more instead of being so harmonically rigid on Coltrane changes. So check out how Chick Corea plays Coltrane changes. It's a different approach, but it works also really well. As an example, of course, there's many different ways. And it's also used to reharmonize a lot of tunes, Coltrane changes. Coltrane himself did it, but not for me. On the My Favorite Things album is I believe has a reharmonization with Coltrane changes. Satellite is a reharmonization of How I the Moon with Coltrane changes. 26-2 is a reharmonization of Confirmation with Coltrane changes, and so forth. Takes a lot of work to integrate Coltrane changes into your playing. And sometimes it's best to let it go after you get it, honestly. Headhunters, that's the famous band and album from Herbie Hancock. Really cool fusion album as well. It's Watermelon Man, like this type of things. Just very good stuff. I think it's quite popular. Don't think it should be on the third category. Hammett Cohen, we saw a video from him from his channel last time. It's the guy nowadays in New York, especially in jazz, with making jazz popular and really getting his name out and playing with all the greats. The guy just with his YouTube channel. I think he started doing it during coronavirus, the lockdown. He would just start having concerts in his living room, and then he just live streamed it on YouTube, and then started to invite like really heavy cats, and it really became a thing, and it's still a thing. I try not to miss any. I try to watch later on. It's very happening. It's like the biggest guys play there. Pretty much. Afro-Cuban, that's Cuban, usually think of Dizzy Gillespie, 19 Tunisia and such, Manteca. But yeah, I wouldn't know exactly where the difference is between Afro-Cuban and normal Cuban music, standard music, Cuban music. I think maybe Afro-Cuban music could be also more switched around with 12/8 feel, like it's usually played con alma. You can play the A part, for example, with like a 12/8 type of Afro feel. Here above was the clave rhythm. You can play clave rhythms also in 12/8 feel, which is pretty cool to master. The Big Four. I also don't know. The Big Four jazz. What is the Big Four in jazz? The Big Four refers to the emphasis on the fourth beat of each bar in traditional jazz. I think that's what it means. The work moves through time, beginning with a strong Dixieland flavor, moving to the swing era, followed by 70s fusion, and finally a touch of indie grunge. Who created the Big Four? Bolden is also credited with the invention of the Big Four, a key rhythmic innovation on the marching band beat, which gave embryonic jazz much more room for individual improvisation. Also a thing that you hear a lot on the Miles Davis records was that Philly Joe Jones would use like a click on the four. These things was not Miles Davis told him to play that. So that's the Big Four. Jack McDuff, not get it mistaken, but I think I know who it is. Yeah, famous organ player who was the band leader who also discovered many famous jazz guitar players. Hard bop soul jazz from 1960s, credited with giving guitarist George Benson his first break. Yeah, it's very important especially for jazz guitar players. Check out Jack McDuff. You'll have a lot of great guitar players. Even Ben Monder played in his band. Russell Malone, Pat Martino, I think even. Yeah, it's great. And a lot of funny stories about his concerts and what would happen during his concerts. Apparently he was very outgoing. Let's put it that way. Body and Soul, probably the ballad standards to play in jam sessions. Everyone should know it, Body and Soul. Chick Corea, who unfortunately passed away, but talked about him already during Coltrane Changes. Great piano player. Also member of the Stan Getz band that revolutionized and kind of created, I think you could say it was the first fusion band with the Return to Forever band actually, but then with Stan Getz, so it was before Return to Forever, which is from the record Captain Marvel from him. He has a lot of tunes written by Chick Corea. Circle of fifths is when you modulate, when you really just go in intervals of fifths through keys. So you have C, fifth above is G, fifth above is D, and so forth and so forth. And yeah, it's a great practice tool to like to practice scales or tuffs and practice modulating and mentally adapting to it. And through each fifth jump, you gain a sharp or a flat in your modulations. Drop to voicing, not getting mistaken, but I do think I know what it is. Drop to chord voicings are formed by taking a chord and then dropping the next to the highest note to the lowest note of the chord. Yeah. So yeah, drop two guitar chords. The drop moniker comes from the way in which these voicings are generated. To create a drop 2 voicing, take a C major 7 chord that is stacked in thirds and drop the second note from the top down an octave. Dropping the third note from the third stacked C major 7 creates a drop 3 voicing. Amazing. The Sidewinder is a great record from Lee Morgan. Bird licks, so many bird licks. There's even so many bird licks that even Bird himself would quote himself sometimes during his own solos. There's many licks, and they all work super well. It's definitely get a Omnibook and start getting them under your fingers, whatever instrument you play. Superimposition, kind of referenced in Coltrane changes, when you impose a different harmonic elements on top of a tune. So if you have a 2-5-1, you can play Coltrane changes on top of it, for example, as the most important thing is that you resolve it. That would be an example of harmonic superimposition. You can also use different scales for other chords. So if you have a G7, you could use an A-flat melodic minor scale on top of it. Then you get like a G altered sound, as an example. And you can also do pentatonics. If you have a C major 7 chord, you could think of D major pentatonic on top of it. And you can also use triads, imposing triads on triads. That's the idea of superimposition. Police brutality. There's many events of police brutality towards jazz artists, most famously Bud Powell and Miles Davis, unfortunately. Juan Tizol, I think we talked about him last time. He's was the trombone player from Duke Ellington who wrote, among others, Perdido and Caravan. Fusion is the jazz style when you mix, usually what they mean with fusion is when you mix pop funk music with jazz, because you could also say that bossa nova is fusion since you fuse jazz with Brazilian music, but usually what people mean is more like rock pop type of things mixed with jazz. Think of Weather Report. Yep. Joshua Redman, one of, if not the most famous saxophone player, jazz saxophone player nowadays. Great record with Pat Metheny as well. iReal Pro, that's the app that almost all jazz musicians nowadays use to get gigging. Very cool tool. You can just, if you play with singers, you can just change keys instantly and get all the right changes. So super nice. Traditionalists are people who are very, they stick to the tradition and they just play normal, the original type of jazz, and they stick very much to it, or they are against new developments in jazz, so they stick very much to old-fashioned type of playing. Which is funny because in a way we all are traditionalists. It's just how far are you in the traditional sense, because everyone draws a boundary at a certain point. You can say that playing an instrument is a form of being a traditionalist, since people did that before you. A backdoor 2-5 is when you use, go a bit here. Yeah. Backdoor 2-5 is when you use 2-5 from underneath, and you actually are using Moldur, it's called, when you land from the minor part. So if you have 2-5-1 would be in C, would be D minor, G7 to C. In this case, you would do F minor 7, B flat 7 to C. So it goes from the back, C, B flat, you go high. That's basically it. Mark Taylor, I do not know. Jazz, Mark Taylor. Apparently is the chief arranger for the United States Army Band. So he has some arrangements. Let's see if you can hear. Cool stuff. apparently he has a lot of arrangements. So I guess maybe if you grow up in the USA with jazz bands, you probably play arrangements from him, I can imagine. Double time is when you play twice as fast as the tempo that you're actually playing. So that would be if you're playing, usually when you go to 16th notes, then you're playing double time. So what chords? We talked about it. It's those when you stack fourths on top of fourths, and you get these minor 11 type of chords that you hear. If you listen to the Bill Evans voicings, he actually has the top interval from his voicing, from the top two notes, is actually, I believe, a minor third. So F, A. So you have D to G is a fourth, G to C is a fourth, C to F is a fourth, and then you have F to A, which is a minor third. It's not always just fourths. Ron Carter's the super famous bass player from Miles Davis band, but also did a lot of own projects, and he's still playing with his trio to this day. Really cool stuff that he does with Russell Malone on the guitar as well. Third wave, I do not know. No idea what third wave is. Third wave jazz. Third stream is called, is what they mean. Third stream is a music genre that is a fusion of jazz and classical music. Which I guess nowadays you see a lot of people who play jazz that mix stuff from classical music. So that's cool. I didn't know that they started doing that in 1957. Well, I think they did it before already, but I guess it was just coined that back in 1957. Cotton Club, famous jazz club in New York. Second wave. Man, second wave. Second wave jazz. The Wave, Second Wave. Is an album by Roland Haynes. Let's see. Apparently it's not really a jazz album. Nobody's quite wait, let me read this well. Nobody's quite sure who Roland Haynes is. As far as anyone knows, the keyboards that band leader played on precisely one record, his own. This one, 1975, and then disappeared, leaving behind a half hour of ankle-snapping jazz funk played so fast with such meticulousness, it's practically comical. What's more, because Haynes shares duties on second wave with one-time Pharoah Sanders, sideman Kirk Lightsey, and nobody thought to write down whose keyboard is whose. We can't even be sure what Haynes is doing on this record, which means he's a ghost in his own machine, playing with ferocious anonymity from either the extreme left or extreme right margin of producer Jenny Russell's beautiful white stereo image. When it comes to obscurity, Roland Haynes makes Jandek look like DJ Khaled. Okay. It's man. Interesting. Second wave. Would be cool to listen to. I think it's gonna sound like a Beaches Brew or something. Like a weird fusion of things that were not meant to be. Triad pairs is when you pair up triads. So you could do it as an example when you're improvising, that you use F and G as two triads and you start developing lines out of them. Or you can think of it as voicings. So if you have a C major 7, you can think of it as two triads actually. The C triad and the E minor triad, and then you get the notes from the C major 7, the 4 notes. And from there you can start up developing voicings by using 2 triads. So C and B minor, that would get you the C major 7, 9, sharp 11, for example, just by using 2 triads. So you can use it in different types of ways. Barry Harris has a lot of educational material on YouTube from Barry Harris. You can call him the godfather of bebop because he has so many things to say, and he plays amazingly, of course. If you want to learn bebop, just check him out on YouTube. There's many things about him. Jazz voicings, that's how you voice a chord. So that's literally how you put the notes of a chord together. So you can, if you have a D minor 7, the notes are D, F, A, C. And you can, how you voice them, so how you structure the chord, that's called a voicing. So you could do it in thirds, so then you get the normal, what I just said, D, F, A, C. Or you can actually go higher, change the F, put the F higher, and then you get D, A, C, F, for example. So that would be a type of voicing that you can do. Or you can just mix a lot of different things. There's a whole can of worms with jazz voicings. Arguably more important than what type of chord you're playing. Sometimes it's more important which voicing you're playing, how you're playing a D minor 7 than the fact that it is a D minor 7. Pat Metheny tapes are, there's some YouTube videos where you can hear Pat Metheny crack down on his students about how his rhythm is not good enough. I listened to that tape a lot of times, and it's very good study material because I knew that he would say the same to me if I played with him. Check it out. I don't know if it's still public anymore because I think the owner didn't like the fact that it was public for that long. But if you can find it, very good stuff in there. I think I made I wrote word for word what he said there, even back like years ago. Brecker brothers are Michael Brecker, Randy Brecker, super important musicians in the jazz history. Check them out. Brecker Brothers band is you have to check it out. Counterfacts are what you call, especially in bebop, in the bebop era, you have these tunes where the tune already exists, and then bebop guys would write a different melody on top of the chords and maybe change a little bit the changes to make them more improviser friendly. So that's the idea. First wave. Man, how many waves? First wave jazz. Oh, so that's literally the beginning of jazz, with guys as King Oliver, who later on brought Louis Armstrong. So it's the beginning of jazz, the first wave, literally. Yeah. Fletcher Henderson. I've heard this name before, but I don't know where. He's an arranger and improviser from New Orleans, other areas of the country to New York. They merged with dance band tradition that relied heavily on arrangements written out in musical notation. So I guess the beginning of the notation process of New Orleans jazz could be, perhaps Fletcher Henderson played a big part on it. I believe he was a clarinet player. I think so. Jazz Crusaders. I know the Jazz Messengers. Jazz Crusaders, I do not know. It's a jazz fusion group. Successful from the 1960s to the 1990s. Okay, what happened to them? Wayne Henderson died. People tend to die. In Houston. Okay. Who played guitar? Larry Carlton. Oh, that's interesting. Cool. I'll have to check it out then. Jazz Crusaders. Jazz Voicings stuff we already talked about. Marsalis Twins. I do not know about the Marsalis Twins. What is going on here? That's not the Wynton Marsalis there. Huh? Jazz. What? These are not the Marsalis twins. They're imposters. Are these the Marsalis twins? The Potash twins? No, they were just guided by Wynton Marsalis. That's why it's popping up. Does Wynton Marsalis have a twin? I know that Marsalis is a jazz, like a family that's rich in jazz. Could that be it? Yeah, damn. I wouldn't know. Marsalis twins. Marsalis twins. Oscar Peterson. Yeah, the jazz piano player that incorporated blues a lot into his bebop, into the bebop language, from Canada. Hosted a TV show that made jazz very popular in Canada. Was a hero of Duke Ellington. Duke Ellington really liked how Oscar Peterson played. And I believe he inspired him for Duke Ellington to start playing more bebop type of things later on in his life. Cool. But yeah, you have to check out Oscar Peterson. So many great albums. I think Night Train, I think, is one of the coolest ones from him. There's so many. Also really cool to check him out playing drumless trio, so trio with guitar and bass. That he did a lot. I believe that's his favorite trio formation that he got from the Nat King Cole, which was a big inspiration for him, how Nat King Cole played piano. So yeah, he always played with very good guitar players, also very good bass players. Very cool to check out. Also good for your technique if you transcribe them, because there's some killing tempos there. Cool blues lick. That's the something like that. That's from the tune Cool Blues, no? There's a Cool Blues. Charlie Parker. Lead sheets. Because he quotes himself in another tune where he's just, damn it. Here it is. I mean, it's cool lick. It repeats 3 times as a standard in blues. Not sure about this D flat minor 7 that goes to C minor. Perhaps he plays it. Could be. But yeah, that's the cool blues lick. Cool lick to learn. It's Charlie Parker lick also. And he plays it himself in a different blues tune. I don't remember now which one. But it's a cool lick, literally. Impulse Records. Man, Impulse Records. It's a label. Jazz. Who was on Impulse Records? I think Coltrane was on Impulse. John Coltrane was among Impulse's earliest signings. Thanks to consistent sales and positive critics of his recordings, the label came to be known as the house that Train built. So it's literally the Coltrane label. Achieved early success by signing Ray Charles, who had just ended his contract with Atlantic Records. Okay. So they also signed Gil Evans and then later on John Coltrane. Oh, that's a really cool album. The Blues and the Abstract Truth by Oliver Nelson. If you haven't checked that out, killing band. Yeah, all-star group here, featuring Freddie Hubbard, our friend, Eric Dolphy, Bill Evans, Paul Chambers, Roy Haynes. Amazing album to check out. Apparently it's also on Impulse Records. So check it out. Nelson played an important role in the label's early years before relocating to Los Angeles, where he became an arranger for film and television. Taylor left Impulse in the summer of 1961 after being approached by MGM to become the head of Verve Records. Well, he was doing a great job in Impulse Records by getting all these guys. Man. Cool. I guess that's they also probably got really big with John Coltrane Quartet success. Interesting. Slash chords, those are the chords where you have, we talked about triad pairs before, where you have 2 triads that go along together, that can give you a 7th chord. And when you get slash chords, which you can find a lot in this bass player guy. Oh man, getting a blank now. The bass player from that plays with John Scofield, that older guy, John Scofield. Bass. Oh, come on. The guy who also played with Jim Hall. Steve Swallow, of course. Steve Swallow. There's many tunes from Steve Swallow that have slash chords. And sometimes when you see a lead sheet, sometimes slash chords, they mean that you just play a chord and then you put a different bass note on it than you would expect. So C major 7 slash B, for example, or C slash B. And sometimes they literally mean like 2 chords at the same time. Like C major 7 slash D major 7. I don't know. Usually I see it more in the context where you have a different bass note, but there are people that write it like that. But maybe they are wrong. Slash chords. I think especially for piano players, when you can get like really polychords into your voicings, it's very interesting. Joe Jones symbol is of course referring to the famous Charlie Parker history where Papa Joe Jones threw a cymbal at Charlie Parker during a jam session because he was playing terribly. And he said it almost decapitated him, and then Charlie Parker went on a this was before Charlie Parker was Charlie Parker, and he went practicing a lot, and that's why he became great, because Joe Jones threw a cymbal at him. Some differing stories. Some people say that he just threw a cymbal to the ground and stopped playing or something, and then everybody left Charlie Parker out of the stage. Yeah. Dry martini. Probably referring to crooners. Man, I have no idea what it refers to, because dry martini is just, I guess, a jazz trio. I don't know. Like a working, playing guitar for sounds of a dry martini. I mean, I don't even know what a dry martini is, I think. Does it mean that you don't add ice? Well, now we're exploring the real questions. Dry indicates that very little vermouth has been added to the cocktail, so the gin is the primary focus. The typical ratio is 6 parts gin to 1 part vermouth. However, order extra dry and you'll get the slightest splash of vermouth, or even just a glass coating wash. Okay. Is dry martini just vodka? Any martini? Well, okay, we get it. Unforgettable duet. There's many unforgettable duets in jazz. Natalie Cole. Oh, that's the where she sings together with a recording of her father that passed away, or something like that. And cool. That's the only way that I think you can make a recording of a playing along with the recording of a musician that passed away or something, is if he's related to you, or there's something important there that gives you the permission to do that. Because there's also other examples where it's not so nice to do that. But yeah, that's what it's referring to. Unforgettable. Transcribe. Just Transcribe. Rudy van Gelder. Amazing producer, one of the biggest, I think, the Rudy van Gelder studio. Where was he exactly? Like an engineer? Yeah, recording engineer specialized in jazz. He recorded a lot for Blue Note, and I believe, almost every session from Blue Note Records from 1953 to 1967 was Rudy van Gelder. So super important for the jazz sound from that era. Subliminal playing. I guess that's when you play good. Subliminal playing. Jazz. Subliminal jazz. Subliminal therapy. Jazz. Cool. Wayne Shorter, member of the Miles Davis Quintet, member of Weather Report, his own band, made Speak No Evil. Good friends with Coltrane. Good friends with John Coltrane. He also worked on Coltrane changes with Coltrane. You can see it on Fefi Fofum. The changes there are kind of related to Coltrane changes in a way. Yeah, Saxophone Colossus refers to the album from Sonny Rollins. Was also his nickname because Sonny Rollins was so tall. We got this. Django Reinhardt, famous jazz guitar player, gypsy jazz guitar player from Belgium that played mostly in Paris when he was really big. Burned his hands, so he could only play with 2 fingers, a bit of the third, and he played amazingly. Great jazz guitar player. Also played some electric guitar. There's some recordings with him and Duke Ellington where he plays electric guitar. Columbia Records is another big jazz label. Lester Young versus Coleman Hawkins. That refers to different approaches into improvisation. Lester Young is a much more melodic type of player. Thinks much more in lines and how melodic you're playing. Coleman Hawkins is much more harmonic and vertically through changes. If you listen to Coleman Hawkins on Body and Soul, he's really playing out the changes with lots of arpeggios. Lester Young plays much more horizontally, so much more linear with importance of the direction of the line. Music for musicians, that's what jazz is. Melodic versus technical. Yeah, I mean, technical can be melodic and melodic can be technical. So, different ideas. Devil music, that refers to what jazz was called at the start of it. Yeah, that, you know, whenever something new comes up where it is rock and roll, jazz music, bebop, it's weird, so you just call it the devil music. That's the easy way to deal with it. That was the third tire from Cotton Club, and now we move to the evil Charlie Parker category. Charlie Parker Taxi refers to the incident where Charlie Parker actually, they say they hit a chicken. The taxi driver hit a chicken on the road, and Charlie Parker said to stop, got the bird and took it home for dinner, and that's how he got the nickname Bird. So the legend goes. Quartal voicings is when you, like in So What, when you stack in fourths into your voicing to get a big, different type of sound. So different type of intervals in your voicing. More fourth voicings. Village Vanguard, famous jazz venue in New York. A lot of jazz albums like the Bill Evans or the Sonny Rollins one that are live in Village Vanguard. That's here. Universal Studios Fire. That I don't know. Do you mean that Universal Studios is fire? Lit? ...2008 Universal Studios Fire. I guess a lot of, it was in 2008. Lost a big amount of master tapes from movies, and I believe also music. There's multiple fires also apparently, but I think there were more than only the 2008. I think it's the most recent one. Yeah. Guinness Cork Jazz Festival. I have no idea what you mean. Cork Jazz Festival. The Cork Jazz Festival is an annual music festival held in Cork City, Ireland in late October. The first festival began on Friday, 27th October 1978 and has been held every year since. The festival is Ireland's biggest jazz event and attracts hundreds of musicians and thousands of music fans to the city each year. Okay. I guess it's just a jazz festival. Maybe the person who made this is from there and they want to advertise it. I don't know. Song X is a great album by Pat Metheny with Ornette Coleman. Super cool to check out. Also Charlie Aiden, I believe, on bass. Coltrane Circle Study. I think that refers to the famous image from John Coltrane. Coltrane Circle Study. Yeah, to this. Illustrating the mathematics. Really, I think it's quite self-explanatory about the interval and the relations between the different intervals. I think it looks more impressive than what it actually comes down to it. It's pretty self-explanatory if you take some time to go through it. Maybe I can do it some other time. The altered scale is the 7th. If you start the melodic minor from the 7th note, it's a mode from the melodic minor. So C melodic minor is the same as the B altered scale. That's how you can see it. Horn players don't know piano voicings, I guess. I wouldn't be. I mean, the Wayne Shorter, for example, who would write out exactly which voicing he would want on his tune often. So I'm not too sure about that. Francis Wolff is the leading jazz photographer, apparently, from Blue Note, who did all those famous Blue Note pictures. Cool. Miles Davis is a playboy. Of course, so many stories of Miles Davis driving around in expensive cars, picking up hot girls. It's countless stories. Simon Fransman is a Swedish, I believe, YouTuber that makes a lot of funny memes, jazz memes. I think he invented the jazz memes topic by himself. He started doing it also like on the Facebook group Jam of the Week, where he would post the tune of the week, but then on like an extreme meme format. Cool YouTube to check out. Philadelphia refers to how there's so many great musicians that come from Philadelphia. Like Benny Golson, I believe, and John Coltrane himself comes from Philadelphia, I think. Or not? Yeah. The Church of John Coltrane, which is situated in Philadelphia as well. It's the Church of John Coltrane is in New York, I thought. Which is about the teachings of John Coltrane, about how he lived his life, and so forth. No, it's in San Francisco. And this is it, with him, the man, right here. Church of the Saint John Coltrane has preached jazz gospel for 50 years. They better play Giant Steps. Dreamweaver, I think that's an album from Wayne. Dreamweaver. It's from Charles Lloyd Quartet. I do not know this album. From the Atlantic label, featuring Keith Jarrett, Cecil McBee, and Jack DeJohnette. From 96. Which year is this? (1966). I should check out this album. I've never heard of it. Huh. Cool. Dreamweaver. Blues and the Abstract Truth, we talked about. Great album with an all-star band from Oliver Nelson. Machine Gun Jazz. Second album by German avant-garde jazz saxophonist Peter Brotman. Originally released on his Bro label in 1968. It's later reissued. Okay. So I guess it's like a avant-garde jazz album. Also we'll check out. Haven't heard of it. Charlie Parker practice tape. That's there's some practice tapes of where you can hear Charlie Parker practicing. I think there's one famous with the guitar player where they play Cherokee. I think you can find them on YouTube. Free jazz, that's when you play jazz for free. You don't get paid, actually. Royce Hall, I don't know. Royce Hall. It's a venue in Atlanta, Georgia. Yeah. With 1,800 seats. That's how it looks like. Cool. Miles Ahead is a really cool Miles Davis album to check out. Who was in the band? It was an interesting way of playing there. Miles Ahead. From 1957, so before Kind of Blue. First collaboration with Gil Evans after Bird of the Cool. Cool. Gil Evans combined the 10 pieces that make up the album into a suite, which following into the next without interruption. The only exception to this rule was on the title track, since it was played last on side A. Davis is the only soloist on Miles Ahead, which features a large ensemble consisting of 16 woodwind and brass players. Art Taylor plays drums on the sessions, and the then current Miles Davis Quintet member Paul Chambers was the bassist. That's cool. Also with a tune from Hama Jamal, which Miles Davis was a huge fan of. Tune New Room Opa. The Crypt. The Crypt. That's also a jazz venue in the UK. Straight ahead jazz. S. Two S's. I don't know. I think they just mean like when you say straight ahead jazz, that's like the traditional type of jazz where you just play swing, the bass walks, piano comps, and the sax solos usually are. Like you play changes regularly, there's someone comping or you comp yourself, and yeah, that's what they mean usually with straight ahead. Think of 1950s, 1960s way of playing straight ahead jazz. I guess it's funny for this person. The Creole started jazz. That's interesting. The Creole started jazz. I wonder what you mean. Creole started jazz. The Creole origins of jazz. It's a whole essay. On a very general level, jazz is constituted as a quintessentially Afro-American music form that originated in widely disparate locales across the United States at roughly the same time, and perhaps the only indigenous American art form of world significance. My purpose is not to challenge this vague characterization in all its particular, but to elaborate upon a query occasionally broached in social history, namely, what kind of society could have produced the phenomenon of pre-recorded jazz music? I shall suggest that in its early stages during the late 19th century, jazz could not be accurately characterized as even American because of the Creole. Okay, just to clarify, Creole, what is Creole? Creole peoples are ethnic groups formed during the European colonial era from the mass displacement of peoples brought into sustained contact with others. So, slavery, I would imagine. Kenny G, What a Wonderful World. That's when Kenny G decided to record himself playing along with the original Louis Armstrong recording of What a Wonderful World. That got a lot of backlash from the jazz community. Famously, Pat Metheny, who called them well, enough. I think you can find it on YouTube. Pat Metheny, Kenny G. It's a lot of fun. Bud Powell shock therapy is when after, what was it? When Bud Powell started to have problems with the police, they decided to give him shock therapy to help with his condition. And it did not help. He underwent 40 shock therapy treatments. Tragic. Maiden Voyage, famous tune and album by Herbie Hancock. The Murder of Lee Morgan, you can find it on, it's a documentary about it, how his wife caught him cheating and went to, he was playing live, or he was about to start playing live, and his wife came in with a gun to the venue and shot him while he was on stage. Lost Coltrane tapes, you can find the new Coltrane releases, which are not actually new because he has been dead for years, decades. But there's many tapes where Coltrane is still is playing with his quartet or different iterations, and it hasn't been released yet, so hopefully we'll see more, as since it's very interesting. Steps Ahead. Oh, I knew this. Steps Ahead is a band, a Latin, from Eddie Gomez, I believe, the old bass player from Bill Evans, and it has Michael Brecker in the band, among others. It's a really cool band. It's jazz fusion, but more on the Latin side. That's with rock influences. It's a great band. Swing percentage is about how much swing you do. So usually if you have 8 notes, it's straight 8 notes, then it's 50-50. On swing, you start to divide it more uneven. So then you would have, for example, 60-40. Then the first one lasts longer, and so forth. So different drummers have a different swing percentage, if it's 60 or if it's 57, 55, or even 75 or 70 or these things. That's the swing percentage. Chick Corea, Scientology. He was a Scientologist, saved him from his huge drug addiction. So, but it did make him a big Scientologist who also tried to convert band members. Polyphonic improvisation, when you have multiple solo players improvising at the same time. Sketches of Spain, famous Miles Davis records that came later after Miles Ahead, with also Gil Evans as the arranger. Extrapolation, I do not know what it is. Extrapolation Jazz is an album with John McLaughlin from 1969, released in the UK. Yeah, I should check out more John McLaughlin. It's like a jazz rock kind of thing. Also played a lot with Miles Davis. Benny Golson, Impressions. Does that mean that Benny Golson played Impressions? I mean, Benny Golson, good friend of John Coltrane. But no, he did not play Impressions. Impressions is the tune and contrafact of the So What tune by Miles Davis, and Impressions is from Coltrane. Great. Arnett Coleman, very different type of saxophone player, more into the free jazz type of playing, much more melodic, not so much to do with changes, but more with keys and textures of keys. Sheet of sound is the thing that Coltrane was trying to do, with trying to play so many notes so fast that it would create a sort of blanket of notes that you can hear it on the Miles Davis Quintet, especially albums, where he's playing so fast that you just hear like the whole scale almost at the same time. Cecil Taylor is a very free type of jazz piano player that would play very free, almost percussively on the piano. Round Midnight Movie. It's a movie about, I haven't watched it yet, but I've heard about it. Seems like it's good. Buying real books can be a problem, since you're buying copyright free, not entirely legal books. So the Jazz Corner, this I also do not know. The Jazz Corner, I think it's a venue as well, again. Yeah, legendary award-winning jazz club, the Jazz Corner, from in the USA, Hilton Head Island. Cool. Keith Jarrett is a jerk because he asks his audience to be silent, not cough during his concerts. And yeah, apparently also in different situations he's not the most friendly person. Far East Suite, I do not know. It's an album by Duke Ellington that has, among others, the tune Isfahan. It's a really cool tune. From 1967, after they toured Asia. Faring Jazz Bistro sounds like a jazz venue again. Yep, jazz venue from St. Louis. Bob Weinstock, also do not know. American record producer from Prestige Records. Yeah, he founded Prestige Records. Also involved with Coltrane. Apparently Blue Train was there. Previn and Peterson. Andre Previn and Oscar Peterson is what this refers to. I think it's this cool piano duet that they play together. Do check out. It seems like it's recommended by a lot of people. Let me see if I can find it quickly. Oh well. Do check it out. West Coast, pretty self-explanatory. There's a big difference with how people on the West Coast play from jazz compared to the East Coast. Think of Lenny Tristano, Wes Montgomery, Charlie Parker. East Coast is usually much more bebop. West Coast is much more mellow. Monk Voicings, there's a lot of seconds there, a lot of clashes. Specific type of way of voicing it. Ascension is an album by Coltrane, very modern, very free, with Archie Chap also among others, where there's a lot of polyphonic improvisation. And with that, we go to the last part. With the Miles Davis right there looking terrified. The last category, completely dark here. New Standards refers to the album, I believe, from Herbie Hancock, I think. New Standards. Oh no, there's Kenny G, apparently. Cool. I cannot recommend enough. Glenn Miller, Actual Death. It's getting conspiratorial. What really happened when Glenn Miller disappeared in 1944? Apparently he went missing when in 1944 after heading out over the English Channel on a small military plane bound for Paris. Almost from the moment the world learned Miller had gone missing, conspiracy theories began to emerge like puffs of smoke from the Chattanooga Choo-Choo, and they've never really stopped as each new generation discovers the mystery and publishes books and articles purporting to have solved it. But Tennis Prague and Miller's family is doing its best to end all crazy speculation. 2009, Steve Miller, Glenn's son and big donor to the Glenn Miller Archive, asked me if I would consider dealing the last series of sensationalist books. I said enough is enough. Glenn Miller never boarded the plane but was assassinated after General Dwight Eisenhower sent him on a secret mission 1 or 2 days earlier to negotiate a surrender from Nazi Germany. He made it to Paris, where he died of a heart attack in a bordello. The small plane he was on was destroyed by bombs jettisoned from a phalanx of Allied bombers passing overhead on their way back from an aborted mission over Germany. Interesting. Crazy stuff. Jazz in the USSR, I cannot wait to hear how that sounds. Detroit Red, that I did not know. Apparently one of the best jazz clubs in Detroit. Every year we lose more grades as they get older. That's true. AZT. Man. AZT. An Hungarian folk rock band that draws upon the repertoire of... What? Oh. It's a drug. The first approved HIV/AIDS drug from 1987. Okay. Wait, why is this? Why is this here? David Sanborn illness. David Sanborn illness. In an interview in the March edition of US Jazz Monthly Downbeat, famous jazz saxophonist David Sanborn revealed that he's been increasingly suffer from post-polio syndrome. He was diagnosed with polio age 3 in St. Louis and spent a year in an iron lung, followed by 2 years in bed. Yeah, that sucks. And there's still cases of polio happening today. Dave Gardola fraud. What? I'm writing so the word gets spread about the current state of former mouthpiece maker Dave Gardola. He has contacted dealers around the world claiming to sell vintage saxophones, but in reality he's using this as a means of getting unsuspected people send him considerable amounts of money. He's already known by police for lodging fraud, but his whereabouts are unknown, although he claims to reside in Frankfurt, Germany. I have personal experiences of this and truly wish that this couldn't go on any longer. If anyone knows anything, please let me and everyone else know. Huh. What a weird... There's many scams about it, apparently. Amazing. Apparently he's in jail. Jaco Pastorius murder. That I do not know. A Wilton Manors nightclub manager pleaded guilty Monday in the beating death of jazz great Jaco Pastorius. A plea bargain allowed Luke Avon, 26, of Oakland Park, to plead guilty to a reduced charge of manslaughter in return for a sentence of 21 months in prison and 5 years of probation. So that's the guy who killed Jaco Pastorius. Died on the street. Berkeley creates robots. I guess that refers to how Berkeley creates only technical proficient musicians and without feeling. Miles Davis first class. Miles Davis first class. It's a compilation from apparently. A compilation, Belgian compilation, for more than 20 CDs from different labels. I guess then you get the full picture from his career. Almost played on LSD. I believe that. If you haven't, go check out album That's all I say. Jazz only exists in education. I would say not. Definitely not. And however, jazz is one of the best ways to learn music, because you get a really complete picture of how music works just by learning jazz and jazz music. Charlie Parker's actual Omnibook photo that I have to see. Charlie Parker actual Omnibook photo. Man, that's crazy. So this is how it looks like. That's what we all know. You just put myself here. That's the famous Charlie Parker picture. But apparently it's been edited by the book people, and this is how he actually looked like. It's kind of sad. It seems like there was some photo editing done on these pro shots. Certainly explains the old story that at Bert's autopsy, the coroner mistakenly estimated his age to be 50 and 60 years of age, while he was only 34. Huh. Yeah. However, yeah, as they say, like the hand seems to match, but here, yes, this looks like a joke. Very funny. But believable. Horowitz and Tatum. Tatum refers to Art Tatum, I believe. Horowitz, Tatum. And that's classical piano legend Vladimir Horowitz frequently came to hear Art Tatum play and said that if Tatum had taken up classical piano, he would have been the greatest piano player ever. I think you don't have to play classical music to be the best of anything. Jazz musicians know 90% of the iceberg while everyone else knows 5%. I think so. Well, I think I knew more like 80. There's a lot of things that I didn't know. Eric Dolphy, A-Train solo. Yep. Be careful when you check this out to make sure that you're prepared mentally. Acid jazz was a fad. Debatable. This Ryo Fukui Scenery 1976 is one of those Japanese jazz albums that keeps getting recommended over and over by YouTube, and everyone eventually comes across it if you listen to jazz on YouTube, and it's a good album. Blank forms is when you don't have form. Like, I think you could say that Ornette Coleman improvisations or tunes, usually when you improvise, are blank forms, kind of in that way. And Thelonious Monk's 25 tips you can check out. It's a long list of tips that he gave, I believe, a musician that was replacing for a band member of his, and he gave 25 tips to prepare to play. And it's some pretty good tips to check out. I think it works for everyone still nowadays. Yeah. Thelonious Monk 25 tips. Look out if you want some inspiration. I think this should be a bit higher, but it's fair enough. Yeah, that's are the 25 tips. And this is the whole Jazz Iceberg. There are a lot of things that I didn't know. It's cool to cover it. Cool to have a Jazz Iceberg. I haven't seen it yet. So it's cool that I got to go through it. And hope you guys learned some cool stuff as well. And next time we'll go through more other things. If you have any recommendations, let me know what cool things we could go through. I have some ideas of myself, but I was really looking forward to go through this whole thing. And there's some things that I definitely took note of, like this. There was an album here, Dreamweaver, that I definitely have to check out, and among other things. So cool. Thanks, guys, for sticking with me with this Jazz Iceberg, especially if you stayed all this time. And I'll see you guys next time.